thank you for coming out today. We're here to say no to any more MTA fare and toll hikes. And it's unconscionable that just weeks after the election, we have our governor already saying that there is going to be a need for these rate and fare hikes, as if the MTA has not gotten enough money, whether it be in federal COVID relief funds or whether it be the infrastructure funds that they have access to. So just to refresh everyone's memory, November 15th, 2021, a little over a year ago, Governor Kathy Hochul said that the MTA fare hikes and service cuts in 2023 and 2024 were now off the table because of anticipated influx of funding from the bipartisan infrastructure law in Washington. The MTA chair, Janno Lieber, at the time also said that the MTA will have to work with the state once federal funding is exhausted in a couple of years, but again reaffirmed that there would be no need for fare and toll hikes. Senator Schumer at the time said, what the money did is staved off any fare hikes for the next few years. This was in January of 2022 when COVID relief funding was provided to the MTA. So here we have our leadership of our state, as well as our Senate Majority Leader and the MTA leader, saying that there was not a need to increase fare and toll hikes, but yet here we are a year later saying otherwise, that now they're going to need more funding. So first of all, I want to go over that aside from the access to the infrastructure funds that are available to the MTA for capital projects, they received $15 billion in COVID funding. Now we're seeing MTA ridership being 3/4 what it was pre-COVID. And I urge the governor to continue to work to make our transit system safe, to once again make our city safe, so we can attract tourism, so we can get businesses to come back to New York, that we can get their employees to come back to work, that we can get people to feel comfortable in utilizing our public system to get that to 100% ridership. But that is what they're using now as justification to say they need more money. And it's absolutely outrageous, and we're not going to tolerate this anymore. The MTA is a black hole. They're constantly asking for more and more money. And my question to the governor, my question to the MTA is, at what point is it enough? At what point is it enough where the MTA will be able to actually run its services without hitting our constituents over the head time and again? Now, the governor thinks that the MTA does need money, which I would urge her to look at the mismanagement of the MTA, look at the mismanagement of the capital projects, look at the fact that there's still fare and toll evasion going on, estimated to be about $500 million a year, and that's where we should be focusing first. But let's also look at some of the wasteful spending, the bloated bureaucracy that the MTA is, that every capital project they do is a disaster in terms of management. The East Side Access Project, which is supposed to be completed this upcoming year, that was supposed to be completed over a decade ago. And we're still having this conversation. And as a result of the delays and the mismanagement, it is now a decade over schedule and $10 billion over budget. That's just one example. The MTA has 2,000 different projects that are going on throughout its system. But we're talking about roughly almost 20 years later, the project still not being complete and the cost being over $12 billion when it was estimated to be roughly $2 to $3 billion. The state controller recently did an audit, and they found that a $600 million MTA contract with Bombardier Transit Corporation was a total mess as well. In January of 2020, 300 cars that were purchased with this contract were removed from service after there were unreliable door mechanisms. The city estimates that this contract contributed to subway delays of roughly $300 million a year. Again, another example of waste and mismanagement within this system. So before they come asking us for more money, because they're already alluding to the fact that they need more federal funding, which is it's just ridiculous after they received a $15 billion COVID bailout. The governor should also be looking within her own finances of the state of New York. New York State spending has increased $48 billion to $225 billion. 44% more per person than the state of California. It's twice what the state of Florida spends, when Florida has millions of more residents. Kathy Hochul threw another $600 million, which happens to be the amount, by the way, that the MTA is saying they need this year, to the Buffalo Bills to continue pouring money into the Buffalo Bills stadium. I was in the state legislature before he was. And they were giving hundreds of millions of dollars to the Buffalo Bills then. And we're still having this conversation. Another $600 million going to the Buffalo Bills. But Kathy Hochul should have thought about this also before she decided to spend billions of dollars to give free health care to those who are in the country illegally, before she decided to give stimulus checks and unemployment to those who are in the country illegally and actually working illegally as well. So these are the things that we believe need to be addressed and need to be looked at. I've introduced legislation on the federal level to audit every single federal penny that the MTA has received because it's unconscionable that they received all this money and yet they are now asking again for more. If you look at other transit systems around the country, they've also been hurting. They've also had difficulties. New Jersey Transit, they're saying they're not going to increase the fares for the 5th year in a row. Why is it always the MTA that is a mess and always in dire straits, always needing more money and begging for more money? When does it end? At what point will they finally say that they have enough? But they're not going to, because we know the more money we pour into this system, the more it is misspent with mismanaged projects and utter incompetence and bureaucracy. I'd like to turn it over to my colleague, Michael Tannousis, from the state legislature.
Thank you so much to our Congresswoman for inviting me here today to speak. I'm mentoring my 2nd year in the Assembly, and this is something that I've been saying from the very, very beginning. The priorities of our state are not where they should be. The priorities of this state are not the New York State taxpayer. To quote the movie, when it comes to New York State, the working man is a sucker. If you look at all the bills that they have passed and everything in the budget, $2.1 billion for undocumented workers, millions of dollars passed for health care for undocumented workers. What have they passed for the taxpayer? Every single year, there are rumors that fly and the MTA goes on the push to increase the fare, to increase the rates. They try to shove congestion pricing down our throats. If they only took a fraction of the money that they wasted in the budget, we wouldn't be in this situation. The taxpayer should be their number one priority, period. With that being said, I will turn it again over to our Congresswoman, Nicole Malliotakis.
Does anyone have any questions specific to this topic?